Man, even if I hate horror games, I enjoy it. The intensity, the heartbeat, the adrenaline. It really messes you up, but in a fun way. So here are top 10 scariest horror games you should absolutely play if you're a freak like me. Starting off my list with Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Resident Evil 7 is straight up one of the scariest games I've ever played. Like, I'm not even kidding, I legit thought my heart was gonna give out a few times. You know how horror games usually take a while to get creepy? Not this one. You start off trying to find your missing wife, Mia, right? Innocent enough. But then you end up at this creepy as hell plantation in the middle of nowhere, and boom, you meet the Bakers. These folks are not just your typical weird family. They're like Leatherface's cousins on steroids. Jack Baker, the dad, this guy is a full-blown psychopath who will not stop coming after you. At one point, he just busts through a wall with a giant shovel. Like, here's Johnny. I swear, I almost threw my controller. The game also has that classic Resident Evil puzzle stuff. But imagine trying to figure out a puzzle while you're absolutely sure some demented monster is creeping up behind you. If you want a game that'll mess with your nerves and make you laugh at how ridiculously intense it is, Resident Evil 7 is it. But don't say I didn't warn you. You're gonna need nerves of steel to get through this one. Next up is Phasmophobia. The ghost reacts to things you say, which means when you're in the house, you actually have to be quiet. If you scream, panic, or say the ghost's name too much, it gets pissed. And trust me, nothing says bad idea like taunting the ghost and hearing it respond with a spine-chilling growl from the next room. Phasmophobia is a whole different kind of terrifying, but it's also one of the most hilarious horror games I've ever played, especially if you've got a group of friends. The scariest part, though, is when the ghost starts hunting. The lights flicker, the doors lock, and your flashlight starts glitching. If you're playing alone, nah, it's a straight up nightmare. I did that once, and I legit quit after like 10 minutes. It's way too much to handle solo. But with friends, it's one of the best horror comedy experiences ever. You'll go from laughing to screaming in seconds, and it's always a great time. Although PD never turned into a full game, it's still one of the scariest gaming experiences out there. This playable teaser for the cancelled Silent Hills project by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro remains legendary for its unnerving atmosphere and terrifying hallway loop. If you can track it down, it's worth experiencing the sheer terror. If you've played it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't, let me tell you why it's a good thing that your console didn't get a permanent no tattoo after playing it. You're in this small, creepy house, and that's it. Literally just one hallway, but this hallway, it's cursed. Every time you walk through it, you loop back around to the beginning, and let me tell you that tension builds hard. Every time you loop, something changes. A picture falls off the wall, the lights get dimmer, the sound of a crying baby gets louder. You start hearing things that make you question if you're losing it. At one point, you pass a bathroom, and the door is cracked open just enough for you to see something moving in there. But the door won't open all the way, makes you double check your doors, and probably has you reconsidering walking down any narrow, dimly lit hallways ever again. Number 7, we got Visage. Visage is a first-person psychological horror game that draws heavily from PT's design. It's a slow burn, but the unsettling house you explore is filled with dread, creepy events, and horrifying moments. The game's broken up into these chapters, each focusing on a different ghost, and each one has its own messed up backstory. Like, one of them is about this old lady who's losing her mind, and by the end, you're questioning your own sanity. There's another chapter with this kid's ghost that will make you never want to hear children's laughter again. The atmosphere in this game, it's next level. The house is so claustrophobic and dark. Every corner feels like it's hiding something, and when the lights flicker, forget it. My heart was racing. Keeping the lights on is crucial, but the house doesn't care. Light bulbs break, switches randomly stop working, and all you've got is a lighter with limited fuel. And if you're stuck in the dark too long, your sanity starts to go down. Playing Visage is like signing up for a psychological beatdown. You'll be scared, paranoid, and constantly checking behind you, even after you turn the game off. I swear, I had to take breaks because my nerves were shot. It's one of those games that stays with you. If you're into horror, this is an absolute must-play. This one is a classic. Silent Hill was scary, man. I remember playing it alone in my dorm in college. I was so terrified I had to turn it off. It was the first Silent Hill game I played and knew nothing about the lore. Every location was a new feeling of dread, just wondering the next time I'd hear the sirens. I don't know if it'd have the same effect if I were playing it for the first time now, and it's hard to go back to those games because the controls are infuriating. Silent Hill 2 is more than just a horror game. It's a deep psychological exploration of grief, guilt, and punishment. As James goes through Silent Hill, you start to realize that this whole trip is way more personal than you thought. The town seems to be reflecting James's mind, turning his inner demons into literal ones. And the way the story reveals itself, it's a slow burn, but by the time the pieces start coming together, you're hit with this heavy, emotional gut punch. It's not just about jump scares, but psychological horror that stays with you. All right, man, Amnesia. The Dark Descent is a whole different kind of horror. So, you're Daniel, this guy who wakes up in this massive, creepy-as-hell castle with no memory of who you are or how you got there. Classic. Your only clue is this note you apparently wrote to yourself, telling you to find this guy named Alexander and, oh yeah, kill him. Seems easy enough, right? But wrong. The castle is full of dark secrets, and every corner you turn feels like a setup for something horrifying. It's the atmosphere. The castle is dark, damp, and falling apart, with all these creepy noises coming from every direction. The game plays with your senses. Sometimes you'll hear footsteps behind you, but when you turn around, nothing's there. Or you'll hear a door creak open, but no one's in sight. The entire experience is designed to keep you on edge. The whole game is this balance of psychological terror and survival. It doesn't just throw monsters at you every second. It makes you question what's real and what's just your brain breaking down. The deeper you get into the castle, the more disturbing things become. The backstory that unravels is dark and twisted, and by the end, you're not even sure who to trust, including yourself. Cry of Fear is next on the list. It is one of those indie horror gems that catches you off guard with how truly terrifying it is. It starts out feeling a bit like a nostalgic throwback to early 2000s survival horror games, but once you get into it, oh man, it's a psychological roller coaster that seriously messes with you. Cry of Fear is the constant feeling of isolation. Simon's all alone, and the world around him feels hostile and cold. It's like everyone just disappeared, leaving you to face this nightmare alone. The streets are dark and empty. The buildings are crumbling, and everything about the world just screams, something bad happened here. There's no one coming to save you, and you're barely holding it together as you stumble through all this madness. Cry of Fear isn't just about scaring you with monsters, though it definitely does that. It's about digging into your psyche, making you question reality, and pulling you into this twisted, emotional story of pain and fear. It's the kind of game that sticks with you long after you finish it, leaving you with that lingering sense of dread. Definitely a must-play if you want a horror game that gets into your head and refuses to leave. Next one is Soma. From the start, Soma gives off this eerie, isolated vibe. You're so far underwater that no one can hear you scream, classic horror move. But what really sets this game apart is how quiet and empty everything feels. The facility is dimly lit, with water leaking in from cracks, and the silence? It's heavy. Every creak and distant noise puts you on edge because you never know when something's going to come out of the shadows. And when the machines and creatures do show up, they're not your typical monsters. They're these AI systems that have gone rogue, blurring the line between human and machine. The atmosphere is what really drives the fear in Soma. You're constantly walking through these dark, flooded halls, hearing weird mechanical noises echoing around you. You might hear footsteps or machinery grinding somewhere nearby, but it's all so distorted. You're never sure if something's actually coming for you or if it's just your mind playing tricks. The game does an amazing job of building tension without relying on traditional jump scares. The fear is in the unknown, the slow realization that this whole underwater base is a living nightmare, and you're stuck in the middle of it. Now, this one is special. It's Outlast. Outlast is an intense, adrenaline-pumping survival horror game that throws you into one of the most messed up, terrifying situations you can imagine. And then it just gets worse from there. And when I say worse, I mean way worse. You're playing as Miles Upshur, a journalist who decides to investigate an abandoned asylum called Mount Massive, because, that sounds like a brilliant idea. Right from the start, The place is giving off major don't go in there vibes. It's dark, the gates are all locked, and there's blood everywhere. But hey, you're an investigative journalist, so naturally you sneak in. And as soon as you step inside, you realize you've just made the biggest mistake of your life. His asylum, it's not just abandoned. It's crawling with the most disturbing creatures you can imagine. The patients, or what's left of them, are these mutilated, deranged psychos who have either been horribly experimented on or completely lost their minds. And fun fact, you have 0 weapons. Your only options are to run, hide, or die. That's it. You spend the whole game sneaking through dark hallways, hiding in lockers, and praying that whatever is chasing you doesn't find you. The thing that makes Outlast so terrifying is that you're completely helpless. You're armed with nothing but a camcorder, and the only reason you have it is because its night vision feature lets you see in the pitch black areas of the asylum, and then there's a sound design. Holy crap. The sound in this game is what truly pushes it over the edge. You'll hear distant screams, footsteps echoing through the halls, and sometimes just silence, which is almost worse. The worst feeling is when you hear a door slam open somewhere, and you know something is coming for you, but you have no idea where it is. Your breathing gets shaky, your heart starts pounding, and you can't tell if it's Miles or your own. Outlast is survival horror at its purest. It's terrifying because it makes you feel powerless, constantly hunted, and stuck in a place where your only goal is to get out alive. You're not a hero. You're just some guy with a camera, trying not to lose your mind in a place where the walls are closing in and everything wants to kill you. Alien Isolation is easily one of the best survival horror games ever made. It's intense, relentless, and terrifying in a way that few games can match. The alien feels like a living, breathing predator, and you, Amanda Ripley, are just trying to stay one step ahead. But make no mistake, when it finds you, and it will find you, it's game over. The first thing you notice in Alien Isolation is the sheer atmosphere. Sevastopol feels lived in but abandoned, with that classic 70s sci-fi aesthetic from the original Alien movie. Everything's dimly lit, there's smoke hissing out of vents, flickering lights, and it's dead quiet except for the occasional clang of metal or far-off footsteps. And then there's the Xenomorph. Oh man, the Xenomorph is a whole other level of terrifying. It's not just a scripted monster that pops up now and then. This thing has a mind of its own. It's always hunting you, learning from your movements, adapting to how you hide or sneak. The AI is super smart, so the alien doesn't just follow set patterns. It actually listens for sounds, checks out places where it thinks you might be hiding, and if it spots you, you're done. There's no fighting this thing. You can't kill it, can't outrun it. You can only hide and pray it doesn't find you. What makes the Xenomorph so scary is that it's completely unpredictable. Sometimes it'll be quiet for a while, letting you relax a bit, and then suddenly you'll hear that thunk as it drops down from a vent nearby. The moment you hear its hissing or the clattering of its claws on the floor, you go into full-on panic mode. Your only options are to hide under a desk, slip into a locker, or crawl through vents and hope it doesn't spot you. And when you're hiding in a locker, holding your breath, watching it pace around just inches from you, it's pure terror. You can literally see it sniffing the air, searching for you. If you're unlucky, it'll pull open the locker and it's game over. The tension in Alien Isolation is constant. It's not like other horror games where there's a moment of calm before something jumps out at you. In this game, you're always in survival mode. You're constantly crouching, listening, and watching vents for the slightest movement. And even when you think you're safe, the Xenomorph might suddenly appear out of nowhere because it can move through the station via the air ducts, making no place feel truly safe. So here were 10 scariest game I ever played. I am open for recommendations if you know any other games I should play. And also tell me in the comments, what is the most scariest game you ever played? Give the video a thumbs up as it helps the channel to grow, and subscribe the channel if you want to see our videos regularly. As always, keep gaming, keep laughing, stay pixel perfect. Gaming pulse out.